3 spine-chilling true horrors discovered on cursed snowy nights, sinister secrets revealed. The night wrapped Maplewood in a thick blanket of snow, creating a haunting silence that pressed against Sarah like a weight. The streetlights cast long, skeletal shadows, stretching toward her car as she pulled into her driveway. Her heart raced, each thud echoing against the stillness outside. That stillness whispered to her, bringing an unsettling shiver that crawled up her spine. How long would the peace last? Inside, Sarah fought a sigh of relief, driving off the fatigue from her long hospital shift, but as she looked at her children, Jake, with his curly hair, and Emma, with wide, innocent eyes, anxiety clenched her heart. Wind sang an eerie tune through the trees, making the walls of her home feel less like protection and more like a cage. All she wanted was to feel safe, to drown in the coziness of family life. But a sliver of doubt pulled at her. What if she was wrong? A flicker of light caught her attention. The bulb on the porch throbbed like a dying heartbeat before plunging the room into darkness. Panic surged. She fought it down, grabbing her phone to check the time, to check on her children. Emma's face turned towards the wall, her body rigid, whispering, "Mommy, there's a man outside." Every nerve in Sarah's body screamed. Just a figment of imagination, she reassured herself. Just some shadows playing tricks as they navigated a winter wonderland outside. She stepped into the hallway. A chilling draft grazed her back, a foreboding omen. "It's nothing, sweetie," she tried to soothe, but her voice trembled. The whispers outside grew louder. Distorted laughter rang through the air, but it wasn't playful. It sounded sinister, a warning of things lurking just beyond the edge of the light. She rationalized every sound against the interruptions of her mind, convinced it was the exhaust from a snow blower or perhaps just an inconsiderate neighbor. But nothing could convince her of that tight knot that grew in her stomach. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. The wind howled outside, mocking her worries as Sarah faced the gathering shadows. She looked back at her children, who now seemed engrossed in some unseen playmate, their voices rising in harmonious giggles that twisted into troubling echoes. Mr. Halstead, their friendly neighbor, flickered in her mind, his smile a mask too perfect for comfort. What secrets did the townsfolk harbor? Fear gripped her heart as the shadows deepened, the giggles turning into whispers, darker and more demanding. With every second ticking away, dread filled the void where her sense of safety used to be. Were the stories she dismissed of sinister spirits emerging on snowy nights coming true? Could they be real? Just then, a brutal knock reverberated through the house like thunder, severing the fragile thread of her endurance. She froze, the dread pooling in her stomach, a primal instinct urging her to flee while another demanded she confront whatever was waiting at the door. What lay beyond that threshold? The line between reality and nightmare blurred, leaving her gasping for answers as fear swirled like the blizzard raging outside. The knock came again, fiercer this time, as if the hand behind it had grown impatient. Sarah stole a glance at Emma and Jake. Their innocent faces now wore expressions of confusion, mixed with a hint of something deeper that made the hair on her arms stand on end. "Stay here," she instructed, her voice barely a whisper, as she crept toward the door. Each step felt heavier, as if the snow outside was dragging her back. She gripped the doorknob, cold and unyielding. A rush of air swept through the house as if urging her to stay put, to ignore the menace looming outside. As she twisted the knob, hesitant and trembling, a thought flashed in her mind: what if it was a neighbor, lost in the storm? Or worse, what if it was something more sinister? She pulled the door slightly ajar, peeking into the abyss of swirling snow. The porch light flickered, casting fleeting shadows that danced like phantoms on the walls. No one stood there. The night stretched before her, deep and consuming, whispering secrets with the wind. Yet, a figure emerged from the swirling white, a silhouette shrouded in darkness, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Mommy!" Emma cried, her voice a sharp blade that sliced through the cold. Sarah slammed the door shut, her heart racing. "Get in the living room now." Her voice was urgent, almost frantic. Jake clung to Emma, both children glancing back at their mother. Shadows morphed, growing longer, distorting the reality around her. She could hear the whispers now, clear as a bell, a chorus of voices merging into a dreadful melody that filled every nook of the house. "Mommy?" Jake's small voice trembled. "What was that?" "I don't know, sweetie," she said, forcing herself to sound calm. But her mind flared with panic. Was it Mr. Halstead playing tricks? Just then, the power surged back, the room flooding with light. It chased away the shadows, revealing their cluttered living space, a fortress of normalcy amidst chaos. But the fear didn't dissipate. Something was wrong. She rounded on the window, glancing through the frost-laden glass. A shadow flickered just beyond the tree line, where the darkness met the edge of the yard. The figure stood still, long and thin, watching. Not moving, not leaving. Just watching. Then, the lovely giggles returned, oddly juxtaposed against the ominous presence outside. Emma and Jake seemed oblivious to the growing threat, lost in some innocent game that chilled Sarah to the bone. "Let us put on a movie," Sarah suggested, trying to anchor her family in some semblance of normalcy. As she switched on the television, the screen illuminated their faces. The reassuring light served as a temporary balm to her frayed nerves, but the unsettling feeling in her gut refused to fade. Suddenly, the TV screen glitched, and an image flashed, a disfigured face, twisted in malice, momentarily haunting them before it snapped back to their family film. "Mommy!" Emma squealed, eyes wide. "Did you see that?" "I did." Just a glitch. Sarah forced the words out, but dread coiled in her stomach. This wasn't just a glitch. Just then, another knock echoed through the house, louder and more demanding. It felt like a warning. Once again, her instincts screamed. "Stay close," she ordered, her thoughts racing. The pulse of terror quickened. Who or what had they welcomed into their home? Another violent push against the door shook the frame. She glanced back at the children, who seemed lost in their world, laughing and playing, blissfully unaware of the encroaching terror. The wind shrieked outside, a keening wail that plunged her into a spiral of fear and desperation. What had she brought upon her family? Sarah's heart thudded as the door creaked under the persistent assault. The line between reality and nightmare dissolved before her. She had to know what waited outside. And then, a whisper brushed against her ear, icy and close. Let me in. Would she dare confront her fears, or would her family pay the price for her hesitation? The answer danced on the edge of her understanding, just out of reach. The room pulsed with a heavy silence after that whisper, an unspeakable weight hanging in the air. Sarah's heart hammering in her chest was the only sound she could focus on, a deafening war drum echoing her growing dread. She turned slowly, her eyes remaining fixated on the door, the barrier between her family and the malevolence outside. "Mommy?" Jake's voice quivered. "Shush," she hissed, raising a hand to quiet him. The innocent laughter of her children felt like a cruel jester, mocking the rising tide of terror. Her instincts screamed at her to protect her children, to block the darkness that lingered just beyond their door. Then came the knocking again, this time accompanied by a low, guttural sound that cracked like ice beneath their feet. It wasn't just a knock, it was a plea, a summons, layered with a sinister intent that made her stomach twist. "Call the police," she whispered desperately to herself. Inception of doubt rolled in. Would they even reach her here? What if the storm had sealed them in? Swallowing hard, she moved to the phone sitting on the counter, her fingers trembling. The dial tone was steady for just a moment, but the line morphed into static, voices bubbling beneath. She pulled the receiver from her ear, flinging it onto the counter, as if it towered with a life of its own. "Get away from the window!" she shouted, panic spilling from her. She grabbed both children and ushered them toward the darkened back room, where shadows seemed to dance in anticipation. "Mommy, I don't like this," Emma whimpered, pressing her small hand against Sarah's leg. "It's okay, baby. Just stay close." But inside, her resolve was crumbling. The shifting shapes, the shadows, they tasted her fear and danced closer, clawing at the edges of her sanity. The knocking returned, frantic, as if the entity beyond was growing impatient. With every impact, the foundation beneath her confidence weakened. Pieces of Sarah's mind fluttered away, consumed by the dark possibilities that lurked just outside. And then, the whispers surged back, a squawking chorus rising and falling like a morbid symphony, echoing around the room. They filled her ears. "Let me in. Let me in. Mommy. What do they want?" Jake's innocent question cast an ice shard straight through her veins. "I don't know, sweetheart," she murmured, her voice trembling. Suddenly, darkness seeped through the edges of the room like ink in water, pulling her deeper and deeper into despair. The children's laughter faded, replaced by their frightened breaths, an eerie silence enveloping them. In that moment of dread, Sarah felt her resolve crack. She couldn't ignore it any longer. "Stay here," she urged, trembling as she moved towards the door, compelled by an invisible force as much as by fear. She halted just before the threshold, forehead pressing against the cool wood. "What do you want?" she dared to whisper, voice barely audible over the increasing chaos of wind and murmurs. The knocking stopped. Silence swallowed the house whole. And then, as if in response, the door handle began to twist. For a breathless second, time stood still. The shadows slinked closer, your fears illuminated under the dim light, creeping toward her, glowing with anticipation. "No!" Sarah cried out suddenly, a primal scream erupting from deep within her soul. She lunged back, pulling her children closer, tucking them behind her. But that wasn't enough. A desperate thought clawed at her mind. Maybe there was more to this than mere noise outside. The handle twisted further, then a slow creaking echoed as the door began to open, revealing nothing but a void. What if it wasn't the entity that sought to enter? What if it came for something deeper? The horror of what could happen next gripped her, holding her in a vice of terror. "Mommy!" Jake cried, and she couldn't tell if his voice was filled with concern or fear. Then she heard it again, that commanding voice, husky and inviting. "Let me in." Sarah's heart plunged. Would she defy it, or would she make the choice to protect her children at any cost? She had to decide fast, just. As the door swung wider, enveloping them in darkness, what truly awaited them beyond that door, and would they ever understand the price of what lay hidden in the icy night? A terrible chill swept through the air as the door gaped wide. Shadows poured in like smoke, curling around Sarah and her children, wrapping them in a cold embrace that felt alive. She stumbled back, heart racing, dragging Jake and Emma with her. The darkness seemed to whisper back, beckoning them to step forward, to join it. "Mommy, it's so dark," Emma whimpered, her small voice barely breaking the weight of the oppressive silence that hung in the room. "Stay close," Sarah choked out. Her own voice felt distant, muffled beneath the edge of fear that engulfed her. The door creaked wider, an unsettling sound that made her skin prickle as though the walls were closing in. The air thickened with something grotesque and sweet, a scent that clawed at her guts and made her want to retch. "Help us, let us in," the voice called again, soft yet commanding, pulling at the very core of her being. She stood paralyzed, each second stretching painfully. Panic surged through her veins, igniting a burning urge to flee, yet her feet remained planted. It felt as if an invisible weight pressed down on them, holding them hostage in this moment of terror. Then, a shuddering sound broke the hypnotic pull of the darkness. A low growl reverberated from the void beyond the door, raw and hungry. Sarah's stomach dropped. This wasn't a plea for help, it was a threat. "Mommy, please!" Jake cried, his eyes wide with terror, tears streaming down his face. Her heart broke at the sight of his fear, but deep inside, something fierce ignited in her. No one would hurt her children. No matter what was waiting behind that threshold, she wouldn't let it in. With a sudden rush of movement, Sarah stepped forward, fingers trembling but resolute. "You stay here," she commanded, pushing the children behind the tattered couch. She could barely bring herself to breathe as she turned back to the yawning darkness. "Get away from my family," she shouted, her voice shaking as if it alone could cast the shadows back. The growl deepened, it resonated with an ancient malice that clawed at her ears. There was something more behind that dark, swirling mass, something alive, aware. She could feel it searching for an opening, her weakness. The whispers grew louder, seeping into her mind, a cacophony of taunts and promises. "We're hungry, let us in." She took a shaky step back, trapdoor panic threatening to swallow her whole, but she quickly composed herself. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the flicker of the hallway light spilling into the darkness, illuminating the edges just enough to remind her of the world outside. Desperation clawed at her as she sprinted to the side table, crashing into it, sending a lamp crashing to the floor with a shattering thud. If only she could find something to ward off the encroaching shadows. She grabbed the heavy candle holder, its cold metal chilling her palm. Just then, the growling dissolved into laughter, icy, mocking. The darkness pulsed closer, like a tide refusing to recede. She had only moments left. "Mommy!" Jake's frightened voice cut through the chaos again, and that simple sound anchored her, giving her a fleeting spark of focus. With renewed determination, Sarah moved between the kids and the door, heart hammering as the whispers morphed into a language she almost understood. It felt familiar, inviting. She raised the candle holder high, ready to swing it down. "I want to let you take them. You'll have to go through me." But the shadows hesitated, swirling back slightly, almost annoyed. Just then, they shifted, as if sensing a weakness, a crack in her resolve, and the door flickered with a light that seemed not of this world. "Mommy!" Emma's voice trembled again, laced with panic. Sarah felt the weight of that dread overwhelming her like a tidal wave. She had to act. "What do you want?" she shouted into the abyss, her voice now steady, challenging. The laughter faded, replaced by a horrific stillness. Then, the voice returned, deeper, more insistent. "What you hold within." Heart racing, Sarah understood it wasn't just fear knocking. This was something far worse, something indexing her very essence. Breath hitching, she glanced back at her children, the flicker of hope dwindling. What they wanted, what they had come for, she couldn't begin to fathom. And then, silence fell like a curtain. For one heart-stopping moment, she felt an eerie peace, as if the world outside had held its breath. But in that stillness, Sarah could hear it, the soft murmur of unearthly voices trying to penetrate her defenses. "Let us in." With the shadows creeping deeper, and an unsettling sense of hunger building, Sarah knew this was just the beginning. Something monstrous awaited them, something that would stop at nothing to claim what was rightfully theirs. What would she sacrifice to save her children, and at what cost? Just then, a bone-chilling knock echoed, louder and more insistent than before. The knock reverberated through the air, sending shivers racing down Sarah's spine. It felt like a demand, a threat wrapped in the allure of the unknown. She tightened her grip on the cold metal of the candle holder, knuckles turning white, a flicker of defiance sparking within her chest. "Mommy, I'm scared." Jake's voice trembled as he peered out from behind the couch, eyes wide, glistening with tears. "It's okay, sweetie," she whispered, though a surge of fear tightened her throat. The very air thickened around them as if the shadows were inhaling their dread, growing heavier, bolder. "Open the door, Sarah," the voice beckoned, silky smooth yet dripping with malice. We won't hurt you. We promise we just want to talk. Talk? The word resounded ominously, as if twisted beyond its meaning. Her core screamed against the impulse to let it in, even as her heart ached with the chilling thought that this entity could be everything she feared and longed for, a possibility, a hope, a life devoid of struggle. As if in response to her hesitance, the shadows pooled deeper, thickening around the corners of the room, stretching to reach her. The strange sweetness clung tighter to her skin, a suffocating force that threatened to pull her inward. What do you want? Sarah breathed, her voice trembling now, laden with desperation yet laced with a flicker of anger. Your deepest fears. The words slid through the cracks of the door like a serpent, slithering through the darkness. Your anxieties, your pain. We can take it all away. Just let us in. Don't listen, Mommy. Emma's piercing voice shook Sarah back to reality. The weight of her children's presence steadied her resolve. She glanced back at them, their youthful faces pale with fear, and something shifted within her. Whatever you are, just know. Sarah's voice rose, unwavering amidst the turmoil, I will not give you anything. Laughter erupted, a cacophony of sinister mirth echoing all around her. It twisted in her mind, making her stomach churn. Shadows darted back and forth, climbing the walls, their movement somehow alive, as if the very darkness craved her surrender. Mommy, why don't they go away? Jake asked, his small frame trembling, desperately clawing to crawl from behind the couch. Because they want us to be scared. She shouted, summoning a strength she didn't know she had. They want us to break. With a flick of her wrist, she aimed the candleholder into the shadowy abyss. You think you can take us? You're mistaken. The shadows recoiled, swirling in disarray. A low hum vibrated through the air, echoing the pulse of darkness. Their whispers changed tone, turning vicious, agitated. Each word they uttered was a knife, deeply cutting into her resolve. You think you're strong? You think you can resist us? You have no idea what we've taken before. What do you mean? Sarah felt heat rise within her, igniting a new fear. Families, pieces of them, their fear. We only need a little bit to stay. Just a taste. Let us feed. The air crackled, and the atmosphere turned electric. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. Something outside? Or inside? Terror gripped her heart. But was it just a distraction? The knocking continued, relentless, louder now. Sarah, it was her mother's voice, thin and ghostly, echoing just beyond the door. Her heart pounded as dread settled in her bones. Her mother had been gone for years. Help us, the voice cajoled, warm, inviting. No! Sarah shrieked, that moment of false hope crumbling into dark shadows. A chilling realization wrapped around her like chains. She was losing control, and they were coming for her. All of them. Behind her, she could feel the children clinging to each other, fear radiating off them in waves. The air grew colder, more suffocating. What do you want from us? She screamed, hoping for an answer but resonating terror. Everything. And then the door bulged, the wood straining, as an unseen force pushed from the other side. It felt like a breaking dam, ready to unleash a flood of terror, despair, and finally, devastation. In that moment, she understood something primal. Within, they were more than shadows. They were preying on her very heart, on her family. The door shook violently, splintering under the pressure. What kind of darkness were they truly facing? And would it take everything for her to keep her children safe? As the screams of the past merged with the howls of the present, Sarah knew she was at the brink. Then, with a mighty crash, the door finally gave way, and darkness poured in like water through a broken dam. The darkness engulfed them in a shroud thicker than the deepest night. It twisted, coiling around Sarah's legs like a creeping vine, pulling her toward the threshold of hell. She fought against it, adrenaline surging through her veins. The candlelight flickered, a fragile beacon against the vast blackness that now filled their home. Mommy! Jake screamed. The sound shattered her resolve, a high-pitched wail that felt ready to split her skull. She turned to find him desperately reaching for her, fingers stretching out from behind the couch, where he had burrowed deeper in a panic. Emma stood frozen, eyes wide, locked on the encroaching shadows. "Stay behind me!" she shouted, forcing her voice to sound braver than it felt. The candle flickered again, casting ghostly shapes on the walls, each one a grotesque mockery of their innocence. The shadows swirled and thickened, forming indistinct figures, their outlines blurred and grotesque. The laughter that echoed around them was filled with a dizzying mix of joy and malice, wrapping its icy fingers around her heart. "Let us in, Sarah," the voice purred, now overlapping with more whispers, a chorus of temptation that stirred both fear and longing. "We know everything you hide, everything you fear. We can be your allies." "Lies!" Sarah spat, her rage igniting a fire in her trembling chest. "You're monsters." "No, no, we're your saviors," the voice crooned, soothing and sweet. "Just one drop. A moment of fear, and you will feel no pain. Let us take it from you." Behind her, the children clung together, lost in shadows but submitting to her protective instinct. She could hear their breaths, shallow and hurried. "We can't let them win," Sarah whispered, more to herself than them. A crash splintered the air again, louder now, a deafening cacophony of sound that pushed into her chest like a battering ram. The windows rattled violently, as if something clawed to get in. The darkness grew bolder, stretching toward her, each tendril vibrating with the energy of the storm outside. Then, a movement in the corner of her eye. She turned, gasping. The forms had taken shape, faces of those she recognized, friends and family. They twisted and churned within the shadows, eyes hollow yet brimming with a desperate yearning. "Sarah," a voice squeaked, the soft tone mingled with sorrow. It was her grandmother, long gone but somehow standing there in that smothering blackness. "Help us, you must join us," another voice echoed. It was a chorus of the missing, mingling with the shadows, pleading for her to step into the abyss, to surrender. "No!" she screamed, shaking her head violently. Each recognition birthed a new terror, the very essence of her vulnerabilities on display. "You're not real. You're just a trick." The laughter rose again, louder and more derisive, vibrating beneath her skin, making her feel hollowed out. "You can fight all you want. You know what we want, Sarah. We will have it." As if sensing her defiance, the shadows surged. They lunged forward, breathing in her fear, growing stronger. Wood splintered under the unrelenting assault, the walls shook with the weight of something ancient, something unspeakable. "Mommy, I can't." Jake's voice cracked, eyes darting wildly around. Emma clung to his side, her small fingers clutching his arm like a lifeline, but even that wasn't enough. "Just close your eyes," Sarah yelled, knowing that wasn't enough but fighting for control. With one last echoing crash, the dark shadows launched forward, stretching out with skeletal fingers, aiming for her heart. The candle flickered out, plunging them into an oppressive blackness. Only the whispers remained, pooling around her like molten metal, seeping into her, igniting her fears in a blaze. Was this the end? The last battle before surrender? A sickening realization washed over her. Was she strong enough to fight the darkness within? In the suffocating silence that followed, Sarah's fingers searched for the children, but the air felt colder, emptier. Where were they? And then, a faint glow appeared in the distance, an eerie light fighting against the shadows. What was it? Hope? Or a new horror lurking just beyond reach? As the whispers grew deafening, Sarah felt the pull of the shadows intensify, and she knew they would do anything to break her, especially if it meant taking her children too. What awaited her in that light? And what darkness would she have to confront to save them all? The light flickered, weak and uncertain, but it pulled at her like a lifeline in the depths of the ocean. As Sarah strained her eyes to see, a sense of urgency surged in her chest. She took a step forward, feeling the darkness wrap around her, but the light called to her, flickering with a beckoning promise. "Jake! Emma!" She cried out, fear clawing at her throat. But the shadows absorbed her voice, swallowing it whole. The children were gone, lost in the void, and she felt the icy fingers brush against her skin, trying to drag her back into the depths of despair. The glow grew brighter, swirling as if it held a heart of its own. It illuminated the edges of the room, casting long, dark shadows that writhed and twisted like creatures alive. She had to reach it. She had to fight her way through. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of deceitful nostalgia that threatened to ensnare her. "Come back, Sarah, don't you miss us?" They echoed, each voice a familiar memory wrapped in the guise of a loved one. The lament of her grandmother still lingered, but now it melded with sharper tones friends lost far too soon. "No!" she yelled, clenching her fists. She staggered toward the light, feeling her resolve harden with each breath. "You're not real. Join us. You'll be happy." The words were honeyed, smooth and enticing, like a siren playing in the dark waters. Then, at the edge of her vision, she caught a glimpse of movement. A shape emerged from the shadows. "Mommy!" a tiny voice wailed. "Emma!" Sarah bolted toward the sound, desperate to find her daughter. Her heart raced as she reached through the shroud. But it was like wading through thick mud, the shadows clung to her every movement, resisting her escape. Dim shapes materialized, grasping at her, reaching out with fingers that felt eternal and cold. Fear surged. The figures morphed into faces of the lost, their mouths moving, their screams drowning in the laughter that spread like wildfire. "Let her go!" Sarah screamed, pushing forward, her every step a fight. With fierce determination, she focused on that luminous glow. The faces twisted in pain, fading like mist, but laughter still echoed, wrapping around her limbs, paralyzing her resolve. Suddenly, the glow dimmed, flickering as if it were gasping for breath. "No, no! Don't leave me!" The words tore from her lips as she stumbled forward. In one last desperate push, she reached for the light, praying it would guide her through the storm. And then it burst. Icy tendrils of light exploded through the dark, consuming the shadows. Choking gasps filled the air, a suffocating silence replaced the raucous laughter, and then nothing. But where are Jake and Emma? Sarah thought, a cold panic settling into her bones. The light had illuminated the space, carving out a sanctuary, but it was void of life. The warmth experienced just moments ago faded, leaving behind an unnerving chill. "Mommy!" A whimper echoed, not in the room, but from deep within her mind. Sarah felt her chest tighten, her heart hammering as she spun around, searching desperately for the source. "Jake! Emma!" Her voice trembled, fear uncoiling like a serpent in the pit of her stomach. Shadows still clung near the corners, watching her with unseen eyes. Were they waiting? Or just biding their time? The intensity of the shadows grew again, stretching out toward her as if testing her resolve, daring her to falter. Join them, join the lost. Beneath the surface of the whispers lay something more sinister and primal, a promise wrapped in chaos. With a deep breath, she steadied herself, pushing away the creeping dread that threatened to pull her back. "I will find my children," she shouted, a vow forged in the fading warmth. But as the light flickered again, she realized it was just a moment before it was snuffed out, the many faces appearing once more, beckoning her to join them. The darkness loomed heavier, and as she plunged herself into the unknown, a chilling realization gripped her. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a war against treachery that lay deeper than she had ever imagined. What horrors lurked at the core of this darkness? And how far would she go to reclaim her family? The shadows twisted closer, hungry for her fear. Sarah's heart raced as she felt their presence creeping up her legs, trying to swallow her whole. "No!" she shouted, tearing her eyes away from the haunting figures. She could feel her breath heavy in her chest, the air thickening, turning stagnant as she searched for a way forward, a way out. But the light flickered again, each blink a promise of escape. With one last determination, she lunged. As her hand reached toward the glow, a sudden chill swept through her. It was sharp, biting, unlike anything she had felt before. The warmth of hope was extinguished, pushing cold fingers deep into her soul. "Mommy, help me." The whisper came again, but it was twisted, distorted, far from the innocent plea of her child. "Jake!" Fear slammed into her like a physical blow. "Emma!" For a moment, she stood in silence, her body tensed, straining to hear anything, but the echo of her own thoughts filled the void. The laughter returned, soft at first, then loud and manic. The disembodied voices merged into a chorus of madness. "They are with us now, they've chosen." A dreadful realization sank in. The shadows were not just feeding off her fear, they were feeding off her children's absence, a banquet of despair. The weight of helplessness crashed over her like a tidal wave. "No!" she screamed, spinning to face the darkness. "You won't take them. I will find them." The shadows recoiled just slightly, pulling back like a tide, letting the light swell around her. The pulse of the glow weakened, flickering a desperate heartbeat. Sarah could almost sense the light was fighting hard, pushing away the weight of sorrow that threatened to consume it altogether. Through the dimness, she spotted a doorway at the far end of the room, half hidden behind a curtain of swirling shadows. Taking a deep breath, Sarah surged toward it, her legs moving before her brain could catch up. As she sprinted, she felt a sudden tug at her ankle, a cold grip latching on, but she forced herself to shake it off, pushing through. As she reached the door, a door that seemed to glisten with the faintest shimmer of hope, she turned the handle. A deep creak echoed, a warning whispering in her ear. There was a heaviness that lingered behind her, like unseen eyes watching her every move. Stepping through, she was met by an expanse of deep, undulating darkness. The glow from the room behind her faded instantly, and panic clawed at her throat. Where am I? Footsteps echoed quick at first, then dragging, slow. Her pulse quickened as an outline emerged from the abyss, a figure, tall and twisted, adorned with the very shadows that had tormented her. "Welcome to the void," it hissed, the voice layered with agony. Every instinct screamed at her to run, yet her feet felt like lead. "Where are they?" she demanded, anger surging within her. "What have you done?" A laugh erupted, hollow and chilling. "They are safe where you cannot reach them." Frustration bubbled over, tightening her fists. "You're lying," she shouted, desperation clawing at her voice. "Bring them back." The figure stepped closer, unyielding, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "To reclaim what you've lost, you must confront the truth buried within." With those haunting words, the darkness twisted, reshaping the world around her. Memories from her past began to seep out, blurring the line between reality and the lies that entangled her. "Face them, or they are lost forever." The shadows began to swirl faster, pulling Sarah deeper into a whirlwind of memories and fear. She could barely stand against it. "What truth?" she gasped, the weight pressing down harder. But before she could get an answer, everything froze. Silence enveloped her, a suffocating grip that made her feel dizzy. "Sarah," the voice of her mother whispered from the depths. "You must remember." What did she need to remember? And would that knowledge save her children or lead her deeper into the abyss? The silence shattered, replaced by a cacophony of distorted whispers that swirled around her like a gale, threading through her thoughts, digging deep into her soul. "Remember." They chanted, urging, beckoning her to unlock the secrets encased in her mind. But she was trembling, lost in darkness, and panic crested like a towering wave. "Mom? Is that you?" she cried out, searching the obscured expanse for any sign of her mother, desperately clinging to the vestiges of hope. "Sarah," the voice floated closer, thick with an emotion she couldn't decipher. "Fear, remorse? It's been so long. What do you mean? Where are my children?" The figure was still there, a shadowy silhouette veiled in a thick fog of malice. Its glowing eyes narrowed as it stepped backward, revealing ancient symbols etched into its skin like a map of sorrows. It raised a long finger, pointing somewhere deep in the darkness. Look beyond the veil of forgetfulness. That is where you will find them. With a sudden lurch, Sarah felt the floor shift beneath her, the very ground warping like a heartbeat, drawing her forward. A familiar sound dripped from the shadows, hauntingly close. It was Jake's laughter, echoing faintly, like a bell from a distant past, sweet but tainted by an undercurrent of fear. Stay close. It's not safe. She shouted into the void, a futile effort against the oppressive darkness that slicked its way into her mind. She stumbled into a dimly lit area, her surroundings shifting, reshaping themselves into a familiar landscape, a playground from their neighborhood. The rusted swings creaked dull, casting long shadows that stretched over chipped paint and withering grass. The laughter faded, replaced by a haunting silence that wrapped around her like a shroud. "Mommy." The call was muffled but direct, immediate. "Emma?" Sarah pressed forward, heart racing. Anxiety clawed at her chest as the world around her darkened, thickening the air with dread. "Help me." Soft, coaxing, but tainted with sadness. Sarah felt the weight of her memories pushing against her consciousness. Among them, fragments of forgotten arguments, lost gazes, moments she wished she could take back. Each one pierced her with guilt. The shadows began to pulse, undulating like the breath of a creature awakening from sleep. The laughter returned, now layered with harsh shrieks, twisting innocence into something terrible. Tendrils of darkness snaked around her legs, reminding her of how easily they could bind her. "They are waiting for you to confront the truth," the shadow figure hissed, its voice weaving through the cacophony. "What truth? What do you want from me?" "In the dark, the memories stay buried," it whispered, "but without the courage to face them, they will drag you under forever." Before she could muster a response, the shadows spun wildly, laughter ripping through her mind like shards of glass, splintering her sense of safety. A distant scream pierced the air, familiar and heart-wrenching. Her children. "No!" She screamed, terror igniting a fire within her. She dashed toward the sound, fueled by the primal instinct of a mother. A sudden flash illuminated the landscape, revealing glimpses of a darkened room. The familiar outlines of her children's stuffed animals littered the floor. "Plug into the past, Sarah." The figure bellowed, its tone shifting, shadows twisting into sharper angles. "Or watch them vanish." For a brief moment, reality hung in the balance, each choice carrying the weight of life and death. Heart pounding, she hesitated, caught between the horrors of the past and the cries of her children. What truth had she buried so deep? As she reached out, the shadows surged, threatening to pull her back into the void. Time suspended, the decision was hers alone. Would she dive into the depths of her own darkness to save them, or would she face the deepening shadows that threatened to consume all? This was just the beginning. The real horrors lay ahead. Each choice echoing with unseen nightmares. What would she find lurking within herself? The shadows danced wildly around Sarah, their laughter mingling with her thoughts as dread pressed against her chest. "Mommy." Emma's voice floated through the murky dark, pulling at her heart like a lifeline. "Hold on, baby." She screamed, urgency fueling her every move. She pressed forward through the swirling fog, each step a battle against the grasping darkness. The cries of her children ignited a fierce determination deep within her. "Face what you fear, Sarah." The voice echoed, dripping with insidious sweetness. It circled around her, a suffocating blanket. But all she could hear was her own heartbeat, thunderous in her ears. "Face it." The shadows hissed, and for the first time, she felt something shift. With a surge of newfound strength, she shoved aside the echoes of despair and anger that threatened to swallow her whole. She realized that the darkness was a part of her. "Let me reclaim what's mine." She cried out, defiance surging through her veins like a wildfire. I will not give in. The laughter evaporated, replaced by a heavy silence that vibrated with energy. Shadows recoiled, twisting away from her light, from the collective hope she unleashed from deep within her core. Suddenly, she felt a pull within the darkness, a magnetic force that urged her forward. The stagnant air shimmered, and then with a blinding flash, she found herself standing in an expansive room, dimly lit and eerily familiar, a reflection of her childhood home. "Mommy, where are you?" Emma's voice rang sharply, filled with urgency. "Keep calling for me," Sarah pleaded, her heart racing against the newfound stillness. She moved toward the sound, each footfall echoing with purpose. The air shifted and warm light spilled through from a doorway at the far end, illuminating the path ahead. As she crossed the threshold, she felt a glimpse of hope envelop her, tinier but more vibrant than before. "Mommy." The room expanded and swirled with images, her children playing, laughing, innocent and free. "No. This isn't how it ends," Sarah shouted, determination filtering through her fear. She refused to let any semblance of normalcy drown her spirit. The grateful moments were artifacts of strength, evidence that love and light existed even in the darkest corners. The shadows writhed in response, their whispers turning frantic. "You should join them, let go of the pain. Surrender never," Sarah retorted. "You won't win, this is about love. I will find my children." "And what if they are gone?" The shadows taunted, "What if it's too late?" A chill clawed at her spine, the deepening shadows swirling wildly, but Sarah stood resolute. "That's not true," she yelled. "They're right in this moment, dancing in the light with me." With that, she turned toward the flickering glow that danced like a beacon. It surged, and the memories engulfed her, reminding her of the playful moments, laughter shared around family dinners, the warmth of snug bedtime stories. The shadows shrieked in fury, recoiling from her defiance as her heart pulsed with brighter energy. "Your fear has no power over me," she shouted. "Only love is real." The figures of her children appeared momentarily again, reaching out, begging her to believe. "Mommy, please." A sudden spark surged through her, something within her shifted. "I'm coming." She dashed toward them, forcing reality to bend. In one sweeping motion, the world around her began to crumble, the shadows flickering and fading as the warmth of love enveloped her. She could almost touch their hands, feel the safety she craved. "Now!" Sarah commanded, invoking the fullness of her desire to reclaim them. The shadows shrieked and distorted, wrestling against the mounting light. What is this?" The ominous figure hissed, eyes wide with panic. "You can't escape." But she was done listening. With every ounce of strength, she reached out toward her children, her heart breaking with love. She didn't care about the darkness anymore, only the fierce light that glowed within her. The enduring bond hung in the air like a shimmering thread, relentless and strong. She pulled each memory, every laugh and tear, until finally, they manifested before her, tangible and whole. "Mommy!" Jake cried as they leapt into her arms, his warm body grounding her, steadying her wavering heart. Emma grasped tightly to her leg, their warmth reigniting the fire within. The shadows recoiled one last time, the cries fading into a desperate wail of anguish. "No, no. You can't take them. They belong to us." "Not anymore," Sarah screamed, leaning into the embrace of her children as everything around them began unraveling. "You will never have them." In a burst of light, they vanished into the ethereal glow, leaving the shadows to dissipate in the wake of their love. In an instant, they were propelled forward, shooting through the darkness into the comforting arms of daylight. As they landed in their living room, a serene silence blanketed them. Soft snow continued to fall outside, transforming the horror into a peaceful winter dream. The warmth of belonging wrapped around them like a shawl. "We're free, Mommy!" Emma exclaimed, her innocence shining bright once again. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she pulled them closer. "Yes, we are," she whispered, her voice thick with joy. "We're home." The burdens they had once carried melted away like the remnants of a haunted nightmare. They shared a collective sigh of relief, finally safe in each other's arms, shielded against any darkness that dared to approach. As laughter filled the room, echoing into the bliss of a new dawn, Sarah knew that love had triumphed over fear, and in the process, she found the strength she never knew she had. Now, the shadows would linger just beyond the light, but they would never breach the sanctuary of their love and unwavering promise, forever. If you want more chilling tales, you need to subscribe to the channel right now. Don't miss a single story, we have plenty more coming just for you. Smash that like button now, it really feeds the algorithm and helps us keep this adventure going. If you have theories or reactions about this spine-tingling conclusion, flood the comments section. I can't wait to hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this thrilling journey. Join our community of horror lovers today.